live.
Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is the Davy Jones Dockyard podcast featuring, created by the Hivehound and the Monk 52. I am merely a guest here.
But his voice is just so beautiful, we had to have him do the intro.
Yes, those buttery smooth tones. So, greetings everyone, and welcome back. This is episode 3 of Davy Jones's Dockyard. For those of you who don't know, this is our little podcast where myself and my co-host, Mr. Monk, get together. We typically try to get at least another CC in with us to talk about whatever the current topics going on in World of Warships are, and we also do usually like to get just a normal player, just someone who's not a CC. It doesn't matter if they stream or do videos and stuff, but someone that's sort of outside of that little bubble, so we get a different opinion in here as well. Unfortunately, we've not lined anyone up today so far, but if anyone in the chat wants to join, all you need to do, jump into our Discord, more specifically jump into my Discord, put your hand up, and we'll gladly invite you in. So bear with me a second.
Yeah, you might want to give
I'm an idiot.
Help me link to Discord, mate.
Yeah, I should probably put the Discord link in. That would kind of help, wouldn't it?
That would help, yeah. So he does not regular Ojo, because sometimes, when you hear opinions from CCs, community managers, you name it, all these people, we can have a kind of a skewed view in things, because obviously some of the CCs, a lot of the CC we get some stuff for free, and we see the big broader picture. Sometimes the broader picture of things, and
sometimes the broader picture misses us. I think, in all fairness,
it can be both. It can happen both ways. Yeah.
We don't always see the struggle that happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. So it's good to have a down-to-earth person there. And sometimes the best way to do that is just to recruit externally, because you can't just change your mindset that very easily.
Yeah, don't want to be losing the forest in the trees. Is that a real saying?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did I make that up?
We may only see the trees. We might not be seeing the whole forest. Or you could put it the opposite way around. Maybe we only see the forest and we don't notice the trees. But yeah, it's always nice to get
a discussion on its own.
It is. Right, okay. So what we've got in store for you tonight, we've got a couple of topics pre-lined up. Tier 8 impressions, what we think of the new ships, how they're sort of bridging that gap between Tier 7 and Legendary. Do they do it? Do they do it well? Do they need buffs? Do they need nerfs? We will find out. The Battleship issue, which that'll be a little treat. We'll save that one for a description on that until later. We're going to discuss the bureau system and see if there's ways to sort of improve it possibly. And last time we done this, we talked about Will to Rebuild, and then all of a sudden Wargaming fixing it. So I don't know. I'm going to claim that it's all because of us.
Yep, and that is the way to go.
And then we're going to end up with what's currently grinding our gears. So we're all going to have a bit of a chance to rant and rave about what's bugging us about the game currently.
There's always something. Come on, At least it makes me in Hive, because we're British. We always like to complain.
It's an inevitable trait. You ask a British person, how's it going? You'll get, at best, not bad. Usually complaints about the weather. Ask an Australian how they're doing, and they're like, "Oh, I'm bloody great." They're such happy people. But yeah, no, we just like to complain. So it's a good section.
Xarkun, what is Xarkun? He's just like, what have I let myself into?
No, I'm just sitting here trying to think about what do I have to rant about? I don't know.
There's issues in the game. There's always an issue with the game. There's plenty of issues to pick from. But you've got the whole podcast to think about it, so you're fine.
I just feel like I'm kind of person it takes a little bit to work me up into a rant,
We can always try. It's fine.
I challenge accepted. That's all
right.
I've got to say. we are 100% going to see what we can do about that. Right, okay, so if we start off then, so this is kind of my topic. This is what I want to talk about, which is tier 8, how they're fitting into the game. Like, are they actually bridging the gap between tier 7 and legendary? So, because it's my topic, I want to take a little bit of a backseat originally. I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, and then sort of tell you whether I agree, disagree, and that's when we get into the discussion part. So, Mr. Monk, do you wanna start us off on this topic?
Yeah, sure. The thing about tier 8 is the tier's not fleshed out yet, even though there's a fair amount of tier 8s being added, and we still haven't got that matchmaker difference there, where we're fighting just the tier 8s and tier 7, because we're still getting legendaries with with this update. So there's a couple boats that are underperforming, and there's a couple boats that are overperforming, particularly the Sumner and the Dmitry Donskovoy. They're doing extremely well, and there's some boats that are suffering, like the Roon, and the Roon. And yeah, I really feel we could use a bit more ships and wait till the matchmaker pops in, where we just get tier 7s and legendaries, tier 7s and tier 8s, and tier 8s and legendaries before we can really make an accurate call there.
You seem to have missed out the Denly. Is there
I like
any particular reason why you've missed that out? Because that thing is almost too good.
You think it's? Oh, I've heard a lot of people saying it's not very good. People don't like the Delny. I like the Delny, but
I don't know. Man, can I say something controversial about that?
Do it.
Go for it.
Go for it. This is what it's all about.
Oh man, we don't like the Delny. Have we ever considered that? Maybe it's the people that's saying that. Have we ever considered maybe it's the way we're playing it, not the ship necessarily? That's a polite way of saying get good. I don't know what to tell you. It's a fantastic ship.
You said it would be hard to trigger you and get you in a rant. Just want to highlight that. And it's tier 8. Yeah. I don't think they can. Let me just check this. I can't really check, but yeah.
They keep saying no sound. There's the second person.
Oh my God.
I hear it. I think it's just you guys.
You know what it is? I muted myself because I was having a vape and I didn't want that to come through. So, apologies. Yes, I did mute myself on purpose, stupidly.
Oh, just Hive with no sound.
As long as we can hear each other, that's the main thing.
Right, okay, so apologies for that. So let me reiterate that point. So, so I'm going to point out that there's two ships in particular out of these tier 8s that are overpowered. So the Sumner, apologies for repeating myself, but yes, it's true. I'm an idiot. The Sumner is smaller than the Girin, lower in the water than the Girin, so it's a harder target to hit. Mobility wise, it's pretty much identical. It has a slightly slower rudder shift, but it has a smaller turning circle. It has 1,000 less hit points, but it has the same torpedoes, the same guns, and the same damage output. So, like, what the hell? It's better than the legendary version, but they put that in a tier 8 to try and balance the tiers. I think that's stupid. It's probably going to annoy people because I'm sure loads of people are really enjoying the Sumner, but it's because it's overpowered.
They seem to have a trouble balancing the American ships. I've noticed this, you know.
Now we're getting an echo. Really? Jesus Christ. Technical difficulties. Jesus Christ. Technical difficulties. Is there still an echo? There shouldn't be one. We've never had a problem with this before. Every other time it's worked fine. It's the only one I haven't managed to screw up.
Alright, okay. So how is it now? Do we know? Hello? Testing. Seems okay.
Seems okay. Why?
Alright, okay. So, yeah, you were saying about the Summoner. It's tier 8, and it's basically just a better gearing, yeah?
Yeah, it's a better gearing, but it's at tier 8, which I think is just
stupid. Yeah, that's just stupid. Even if it was slightly worse than the gearing, the fact that it's a smaller ship means it has a massive advantage. Like the Tashkent. Imagine the Tashkent, but smaller. How good would that boat be?
Well, that takes me on.
It would be the Minsk.
Well, wouldn't it be the
no,
Delny?
like I'm saying, imagine just the straight up Tashkent, but smaller. Like everything the same. Yeah, that would be very powerful, I feel. Because the weakness of the Tashkent is the size of the ship. Is it not?
The Tashkent's got a weakness?
Well, Xarkun is one of the guys that loves the Tashkent, so you can tell me, you know, what do you think the weakness of the Tashkent is?
The way I built it, the concealment, I don't know that the size of it is. I mean, I've got the range on that thing out to 13.7 kilometers. Things can't really hit you that far away, even if you are a big hulking destroyer. The only problem with it really is the concealment.
Yeah. Well, you build to speed. Well, yeah, I still think it's harder to hit smaller targets, and I think that's accurate. So I feel having a smaller ship would make kiting and duking and dodging shells much easier, and just generally being hit less.
It's pretty easy to do that in the Tashkent if you're using it at like max range.
Yeah.
But anyway, why are we talking about the Tashkent? Why? Okay.
Well, yeah, as an example, the size is important when it comes to these ships.
Size matters, ladies and gentlemen. You heard that first here
there we
live.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's your opinions on the Sumner? If I could get a brief off both of you, like, do you think it's well placed where it is, with how powerful it is, or do you agree that the thing needs a little donk with the nerf hammer?
Wants to go first, me or Monk?
Go on, Xarkun.
Well, I don't actually have the ship, so I don't think I can say too much on it, except that I wonder if this is a product of Wargaming's strange choices with the tier placement of their ships, since before Tier 8 was in the game and now after Tier 8 is in the game, because we have situations where, you know, we have the gearing at Legendary tier, and we have the Fletcher, which is the Tier 9 that precedes the gearing on the tech tree on PC, already in the game at Tier 7. So they kind of had to make something up, and they came up with the Sumner. I don't know if that ship exists in PC or not, I want to say.
No, it's completely new to Legends.
Okay, so technically it does exist on PC, but it's the Pan-Asian variant. So I believe that has deep water torpedoes. Whereas obviously on Legends it has the standard torpedoes, but still
There we go.
retains the gearing guns.
Okay. Well, my ultimate point there, I think, what was it? I was gonna, well, if they hadn't placed the Fletcher at Tier 7 already, maybe that would be the Tier 8 ship that was coming to the game. But since they've already made their choices, they've got to sort of create something new for some of these ships, like the Sumner or like the Maine. And when you're sort of creating something from scratch, maybe it's hard to get it balanced right the first time, versus if you're, taking a ship from PC and sort of translating it to this game. Might be a little bit of an easier process to balance it in that latter case. Maybe. I don't know.
So, like, essentially, what you're saying in a very, very polite way is Wargaming screwed up, giving us things like the Iowa and the Fletcher at Tier 7. And because they have that gap, there's not an instant, easy way to put something in its place. And it's probably going to require balancing.
Yeah, you could. I don't know that it's a mistake, though, or that they screwed up. I think the original vision of this game was much more limited in scope than it's become as time has gone on. I don't know that they really expected it to be as successful as it is, and I
No,
I
they
think
didn't.
they've gotten, like, they had the original. There's a reason it's called World of Warships Legends, I think, and that reason is they originally wanted tiers 1 through 7, and most of these ships would be real ships that actually existed, in real life, legends, you see.
That
But
was
they've
the
gotten away from
intention.
that vision.
Yeah, that was the original plan, and they have not seemed to, because of the popularity of the game, they wanted to add more tiers, and they've already kind of built their game around that, because Iowa should not be, it should be Colorado, but you do want to finish on Colorado. So they wanted to finish with a good, fun ship, because Colorado's a bit too slow for our final tier ship.
Yeah, exactly.
I think someone might correct me in chat maybe, but I'm pretty sure I do remember Wargaming saying that they did not have particularly high expectations for this game. It was originally a bit of a well, we'll throw it out there, see what happens, and it's actually in reality turned out to be like far more popular than anyone expected. And Sifu has said in chat, yeah, I hear that, so yeah, I'm right. They did, so they weren't expecting it to be so popular, and they've kind of had to deviate from their plan now, which is why they never made us up to the tier 10s in the first place. So
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly my point that Sifu said in the chat, just in one sentence, which is why they never made the ships up to tier 10, and now we have the tier compression. But anyway, sorry.
Mr. Monk, Sumner, quick sum up.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, no, I just think they seem to have a problem with their balancing right now, and need to see what they can do to sort this out in the future. So I definitely think the Sumner is overperforming. There's certain other ships that are overperforming, and they need to address it as soon as possible. Because the whole point, in my opinion, the whole point of Tier 8 was to smooth the transition between Tier 7 and Legendary. And there's some Tier 7s that can handle, and there's some that really struggle at Legendary. And the Tier 8s are having the same sort of problem. They're struggling against their own tier and Legendary, and they're doing fine against Tier 7s and so forth. And the Summoner is just simply overperforming, because Summoner could honestly beat a gearing 1v1, is what you're basically saying here.
Oh, I know it can.
Arguably. So, yeah, that shouldn't be the case. It should be, the hard limitation. They should be an in-between class, and it's not doing its job. So, hopefully it'll be subject to some balancing, and I hope they do the balancing right.
Yeah, because essentially the Sumner is definitely one ship that could very, very comfortably perform really well in Legendary, and it dominates the tier 7 DDs.
Yeah. The point of a tier 8 is to be the in-betweener. Tough for a tier 7 to fight, but manageable. And then, Again, the opposite here. Easy. It's still a challenge for the legendaries, but not and not invincible because you can fight other legendaries. That's the point of tier 8.
So,
to smooth that transition, because that's what we've all be complaining about. No one wants to play tier 7 because we're fighting Yamatos and Conquerors and Montanas and
I
Clabears
want
and
to
Shimas
move this along now to the next ship on my list, which is the Denly, and I'm pretty sure Xarkun has played this ship at least
We've
a
all played
little
this
bit.
ship.
So I'd like Xarkun's opinions on the Denly. What do you think?
Is it overpowered? I think it's weird, actually. I think it's weird the choices they've made on that ship because I use Gurren, which I understand is a commander that not most people use on their Soviet destroyers, right? But I use Gurren to get the range out, and I can get the Tashkent's range out to 13.7 kilometers, and with the exact same build, the Delny's is 12.7, exactly a kilometer less. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. This is supposed to be the upgraded version of the Tashkent. I don't know why it gets less gun range, but other than that fact, it's better than the Tashkent. It's got 50 millimeter armor plating on the side. It's got a faster reload too. It's a fantastic ship. Maybe too strong. I don't know. According to Prince Blip, it is the most successful destroyer at legendary tier, which is not legendary tier, tier 8, which is not what I would have expected, but yeah, super strong.
It's because other DDs, HE will not pen the side plating. You'll set fires, but because it's 50 mil, if you hit that thing square in the center with the HE, it's just gonna, shatter, and you may get a fire, but that's the only damage you're gonna get. So against other destroyers, the Denly's ridiculously strong. You just sail broadside because they'll always aim for your middle because people don't realise that it's got 50 mil plating. And even the Sumner, which is ridiculously powerful, if I'm in the Denly and I see a Sumner, I'm like, yeah, this is my lunch. I'm gonna send him back to port real quick, and there's not much he's gonna be able to do about it at all.
Someday enough people will realize that if you shoot AP at that broadside ship with your destroyer, suddenly you'll do damage to it. Your HE will shatter, but your AP should penetrate. It might even get full pens.
Stop it. You're gonna ruin my fun.
I mean, I can say that, but how many people will we see do that? Although sometimes, to be fair, I do see destroyers shooting AP at my broadside Khabarovsk, so people do pick this stuff up. They do learn it. They'll learn it about the Delny eventually.
In all fairness, the German cruisers generally tend to perform better with AP against other destroyers. So I'd expect most German DD players to focus it with AP, and that will be a problem. But in general, I think the Denly might be so powerful because player base issues, but that's a completely different topic.
I think probably you're right.
So should we just go through all the tier rates then and just give opinions on them, because I think those two are particularly overpowered, so they probably deserved a bit more of a chat than the rest. I know the monk thinks the Dmitry Donskovoy is particularly strong. So, Mr. Monk, tell us why the the Donskovoy is so good, or too good. Is it too good? Do you think it needs a nerf? And we have nothing but silence from the monk.
Did we lose him?
He's still there. Right, well, whilst we're waiting for the monk to return, the main. We'll just move on to the main. What do you think of the main?
It's fine. It's a Montana with less guns. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Do you think
that's what I think?
Do you think it fits in between the there he is, the monk has gone. He's just popped back in, so I'm sure he'll put his hand up in chat in a second. I personally think it's in exactly the right place. Like, it actually does fit well in between the Montana and the Iowa. So I think, despite that being a completely new ship, unique to us, I think they have actually put it in the right place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
think Maine's pretty good,
not
yeah.
make sense.
It's literally just a Montana with two less guns? Pretty
Yeah,
much.
it's got 10 guns, doesn't it? And the Montana has 12.
Yeah, I think it's literally just Montana with two less guns. I'm not sure how that's equivalent to T-rate, but yeah.
I have noticed it is extremely accurate, which
Yes.
is one of the things I like about it. But it's not so good that you can just devastate things by one. You do need to get them at least angled to do some
Yeah,
really
it's
significant
still a
damage.
Montana, but yeah. No, it's okay. I think it's fine. Yeah, though.
Right,
The
now
Dimitri
that
Donska boy, though, you were
I
saying.
was about to say,
Sorry.
now that you're back, if
Yeah.
we swiftly move on to the Donskovoy. Now, I've played it a bit. I don't know if I've got I've probably played like 5 or 6 games in it. I haven't actually played it that much, but I am incredibly impressed with its guns, and that's mostly because it has the 180 mils. Unlike the Riga, which has what are the Riga guns? 220?
220mm guns. 220s.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the problem
Yeah.
I have with the Riga at tier 7 is its guns are too big. It's ineffective against cruisers because you overpen way too much. You overpen against DDs, but I think the 180mm guns on the Donskoy are amazing because they're really accurate. They've got really good velocity and shell arcs. And I think once I get that ship upgraded, it's gonna be a bit of a god.
Yeah, it's certainly proving to be quite strong. The DPM on it as well is really high. If you're comparing that DPM to the likes of a Bookie, it takes out the water. If you're comparing it to Buffalo, it's not too far off. And you're comparing it to Roon, it loses that. Dmitry Donskoy beats up the Roon as well. The AP is good because it's Russian. It's got Talon guns, which are very strong, even for tier 8, they're very strong. The HE is fast. It's got a Nokachov hull, which means if you're playing it right, it's going to get overpenned to hell, particularly at closer ranges. It's got better and more torps than the Roon does, which is the German cruiser, and has access to radar, of course. So yeah, it's a very strong ship. I'm not sure what they do to nerf it. Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe other cruisers need to brought to that standard, but I'm not 100% sure.
Is it too strong though? So for a ship to be overpowered for its tier, I think it needs to be. So you're comparing it to the other tier rates, and
so far
it seems to have, from what you're saying, a bit of an advantage over the other tier rates. Honestly, I think the Buffalo's amazing. I've played the Buffalo a lot
good,
more.
Yeah. Buffalo doesn't have the survivability of the Dmitry Donskoy boy.
Buffalo's got better armor. I bounced a couple of shells off a Yamato.
But you're bouncing
off on my stream today. I was shocked.
But you're bouncing off the Citadel.
If you angle it just right, you'll bounce a Yamato. And I think my return salvo on the Yamato was about 15. No, it wasn't. It was 18k. The first one was. The second one was 15k. And then by the time he did hurt me with the next salvo, but then I'd finished him off. But I'd also killed. It might have been an Iowa at the same time.
Is this something to do with the hull upgrade? Maybe is there a hull upgrade that buffs the Buffalo armor scheme here?
Possibly. I haven't actually looked to see if because I don't think there's very many ships that the hull upgrade actually gives armor buffs to, but there is a few. And honestly, without looking at them, without going back finding a stock one, somehow getting a stock version and then upgrading it, I don't know, and it's not something I'm going to do right now because we're on the podcast.
Because when I'm comparing the armor scheme here, it's quoted in 27. The only thing, there's inner platings, I'm looking at it, that are above 27. But the only thing that's going to bounce a Yamato shell is the Citadel. And the stories you guys are telling me, you're saying you bounced off the Citadel twice, and if you overmatch the armor, then you're giving almost flat angles. So it doesn't make sense to me, at least according to the paperwork, according to the armor viewer.
So I am paying attention to chat here, and just quickly, I don't like interrupting the flow of our conversation too often. But if I could suggest a video for you guys is to review Will to Rebuild / the Battleship problem. We're talking about the Battleship problem. That's one of our topics for tonight. But we did actually extensively discuss Will to Rebuild in episode 2 of Davy Jones's Dockyard. Where I think we spent about an hour discussing it and like potential fixes to it. So I'd suggest going back and watching that one to sort of get our thoughts on it. It's also available on Spotify, so you can listen to it on your drive to work, whilst you're on the bog. There is many ways. We will reach out and touch you wherever we can.
Oh man! All right, moving swiftly on. Oh man.
Well, we talked about the Donskoy, and I think the Donskoy, I don't think it's overpowered. I think it's a very good ship, and it does have some good advantages over the other tier 8 cruisers, but also it's an Ochakov hull. So if I'm in my Buffalo, I'm not scared of it. I'd be worried about it if I was in the Roon, judging by what you're saying.
The Roon's not very impressive, neither is the Ibuki. I think maybe you could buff the Roon and buff the Ibuki rather than nerfing those two, maybe.
I've not unlocked. Maybe. Those are the two ships I haven't unlocked because I don't particularly like the playstyle of the Japanese. I don't like spamming HE like from 17 kilometers away. It's just not my playstyle. And I've never really got along with the German cruisers, so I can't really comment on either of them.
The Roon's really bad right now. It's you can make it work, but the thing is, it's basically a hipper. Imagine a hipper, right? But give it triple turrets, but then put the turrets at the back.
So it's a kitey boat.
But it's not a kiting boat.
But it's not a kiting boat.
It's a hipper. It's literally think of it as a hipper, but the guns are at the back. It's kind of counterintuitive as well.
Well, you just got to turn it around. Just reverse into the battlefield.
Also, it also loses out on an extra set of torps, which it's quite big for the Hipper, because Hipper has 2 sets of 3 per side, which is a lot of torpedo power. But you lose that with Roon. The Dmitry Donskoy has better torpedo power than their German cruiser, which generally have the turtleback armor scheme, the quarter pane HE, and a very good AP, but the Donskoy is kind of taken over that armor, that kind of role there for the Roon, because the Roon does not really seem to work well with its intended playstyle. I feel, but maybe I'm just need to get better at it. Honestly.
Do you have any opinions on the Roon, Xarkun? I don't know if you've unlocked that or played it or looked at it much. I essentially looked at it and just went, "Yeah, no, that ship's not for me." I will unlock it eventually. Obviously, I'll get around to unlocking them all at some point. But yeah, it just didn't interest me, so I just left it there.
Yeah, I have not bought either of them. I'm sure the Donskoy is pretty good. I would not have expected the Roon to be good in any way. It's got a reputation on PC, I think, for not being super great. And also, I really don't like the German cruisers either, like the Hipper. I think... Here's another controversial thing for me to say, but people in this community really seem to like it. I think it's vastly overrated. It is a mediocre cruiser at best. I don't know why people like it so much, but the Roon I wouldn't expect to be any different. The Hindenburg, if that ever comes to legendary tier, that will be fantastic, I'm sure.
I'm honestly in agreement with you, whereas I don't understand the whole love for the German cruisers. Their fire rate isn't great. Their DPM isn't particularly good. Like the only time I've come across when I've gone, oh bollocks, it's a German cruiser, is if I'm in a battleship and it's come around the corner at like 5 kilometers away from me, angled well so it's used its armor and just torped me. because that's
Yeah, that's what I'm
all it
saying.
can do.
And
but
that gimmick, that advantage is
but
taken away with the
the
Roon.
rune can't do that, because if you hit
Yeah,
me with 3 German torps, I'm going to be like ha 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 ha, and that's going to be it. So
yeah.
so essentially, if they give it its torpedoes back, would it be good?
Maybe, but it's difficult. It's because of the guns at the back. If the guns are at the front, this would be a completely different conversation. That's how dramatic that gun change is. The guns are at the front, you could be aggressive with it. It would do really well, but you have to turn and give so much broadside to actually shoot all your guns. Unless you want to shoot 3 guns at people, it's not very effective that way.
I tell you what,
People can make it work, but yeah,
we're going to make a slight change, because it's a topic
yeah,
we talked about discussing. So once we finish these tier 8s, we're going to
yeah.
quickly do a what ship lines would you suggest to new players? Because we did just get a question in chat from Doped Wookie, about he's just picked up the game, he's just started playing, so like what would we suggest? So let us finish this tier 8 topic here, Dopey. Doped, sorry, not Dopey. Doped.
Sophie,
I got Doped and Wookie mixed up. It's Dopey. Let us finish this little tier 8
yeah,
chat,
yeah.
and
We'll be quite quick.
and we'll get into what we would suggest for new players.
Yeah, so the runes could definitely use some love, is what we're trying to say here. The Ibuki has 1 kilometer less range for its torpedoes than Mogami. It's got a bugged turret at the minute, and it's comfortable and smooth to use. But comparing it to the other cruisers, it might struggle a little bit. It's very accurate though, so I feel Ibuki could maybe use some love, but I think it's just enough to be okay where it is. So Ibuki's actually okay, but maybe it could use some love. Ruden definitely needs some love, and the Buffalo and Dimitri maybe nerfs, but I don't know. I think they're okay.
Leave my
I'm not
buffalo
100%.
alone.
Yeah, there you go. Leave the Buffalo alone. Yeah, I think they're fine. In terms of the tier 8 battleships, the main we think is fine. The Frederick de Grosse is actually really good. We quite enjoy that one, I think. think everyone
I'll
probably-
be honest with you. I don't like it. I would rather take the Brandenburg into a legendary tier match than the FDG, but I haven't got it fully upgraded yet, and I don't
like
know
my
what difference
FDG.
that makes to the ship.
I do like my FDG. Improved secondaries. You get 16-inch guns instead of 15 that you're used to for the Germans. It's just a down tier GK, which is perfectly fine, and that's literally what you want for tier 8.
In that
I like
respect, it is a down tier GK, which would suggest to me that it's kind of in the right spot.
Yeah.
What about you,
It
Mr.
is, in
it's-
fact,
yeah.
the tier 9 on PC. The GK
Yeah,
is the
there we
tier
go.
10, and Bismarck is tier 8, so it really is
Yeah.
in the right spot. And it's
Yeah.
better than I thought it would be. I
Yeah.
actually like it quite a lot.
There we
I
go.
think I like it more than the GK.
And
And
it's smaller. Yeah.
yeah, and it gives me hope because its secondaries have quarter pen, unlike any of the other German secondaries. And if they're willing to do that with one, maybe they'll finally do it for all of them, like they should have.
And they also have improved accuracy as well. FDG secondaries.
Yeah, they are pretty accurate.
FDG secondary video coming soon on my channel, by the sounds of it. Xarkun
Yeah.
has managed to. I know Monk likes it, but Monk and Xarkun both saying that it's a good ship. I might spend a little bit more time. It's on my list of ships to do. I've been essentially playing them. I've been essentially going through them one by one, trying to max them out, and.
Yeah, no, I did 165k with it, and it was completely stock. I had a really good game with it.
Right, so Sovietsky Soyuz, what do we think?
Oh, I'll leave.
Is it better? Is it better than the Lenin?
I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, that ship doesn't really do much for me in this game. I mean, it's fine. It's pretty good. It's very tanky. It has good firepower. Honestly, it's probably pretty excellent, but I don't really care about it all that much. The first line I ground out on PC was the Russian battleship line. And once you get Kremlin, after playing Sovietsky Soyuz there, it's just like, whatever. I'll be excited if Kremlin comes. Sovietsky Soyuz
Hello?
I think we might have just lost Mr. Xarkun.
He'll come. He'll maybe leave the chat and come back. That's what
Yeah,
fixes it.
hopefully he'll just jump out and jump back in.
But what I think Xarkun's been spoiled by the PC power of the Russian battleship
Use
line.
is good though.
The Kremlin's amazing. There we go. He's just.
Oh, he's out and then he's back in. I don't know what's going on now. I think he said he really wanted Kremlin, just to highlight that.
Apologies there, Xarkun. We lost you for a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh yeah. The Sovietsky Soyuz is good, but yeah, I just want to play Kremlin.
I've not played Kremlin, so I've got that, I guess, luxury of not having experienced it yet. So I can comfortably say the Soyuz is very tanky. The point where you can angle, even if you're partially broadside, you can still bounce the shot because of the way the armor's sloped. It's got very powerful guns when they hit, and yeah, it's really tanky as well. The guns are quite good as well. I think it's a wonderful ship. I think it's definitely an upstep improvement from the Vladivostok. And is it better than Lenin? I would say it's similar in terms of this tankiness. It's very cool.
That was
I agree.
That was my opinion. In all fairness, I haven't fully upgraded it yet. Same sort of thing. I've played maybe 5 or 6 matches in it now, and yeah, it's really tanky. It's got really good guns. Guns aren't particularly accurate, but that's what you kind of expect from a Russian battleship. You know, it's the long game. You tank the damage, and when you get in close towards the end of the match, is where the thing really comes alive.
Yeah,
and
so that's
I think it's better than the Vladivostok, but honestly, I think it's maybe not quite, maybe on par with the Lenin, which kind of makes me feel a bit disappointed because the Lenin at tier 7, but then again, the Lenin at tier 7 is probably slightly on the overpowered side, not massively overpowered.
Yeah, Lenin, you can kill Lenin if you catch Lenin broadside. That's a dead Lenin, you know. But yeah, no, that's there. And Izumo, I quite like the Japanese BBs, so I played quite a lot of Izumo, and I feel it's got absurdly high detection for no reason. The guns, despite having the best Sigma value, can be a little bit floppy at times, but yeah, it's quite tanky as well. I quite like the Izumo. I feel it could
really quickly,
I don't know why.
Do you want to briefly explain Sigma value? Because this is not a stat that we get. And if we start talking about Sigma values and shell velocities and stuff like that without giving it like a little brief explainer, you know, we might lose some people.
You've got dispersion and Sigma. Dispersion is the elliptical. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to be careful with this. Dispersion is the elliptical zone. There's an ellipse where you fire your guns, and that within that ellipse is where the shells can land. That's the possibility of the shells will land in this ellipse.
So to simplify that real quick, so basically, when you aim your guns, you've obviously, everyone should know where your aiming point is. Like, we know our shells don't always hit there. Essentially, depending on the ship, there's an ellipse that goes around it. So, you know, like an ellipse, like an eye shape.
From your aim point.
Around your aim point. And the better, which is the higher number, the Sigma value, which is a hidden stat.
That's dispersion. That's
the
dispersion.
Smaller that value is.
That's the dispersion value. The smaller the elliptical circle is the smaller the dispersion. The Sigma value is the likelihood that the shell will land closer to the center point. That's the Sigma value. So basically, within that elliptical circle, the likelihood of the shell will hit the aim point or close to it is the Sigma value. The higher the Sigma value, the better. With dispersion, it says how much can the shells deviate from the center point, basically. In that, how big is that elliptical circle?
And then accuracy is how close the shells land to each other. So
that's grouping. But
it's quite complicated.
It's a complicated stuff. If you really want to know more about it, I have a very down-to-earth explanation on my own Discord, but that's a whole different topic there, honestly. Yeah, so that's it for one. So basically saying that the Ismo is technically one of the most accurate in terms of the shell gripping out of all the BBs at tier 8 as things currently stand, but it can still be a little bit trolly. The gun penetration is pretty good for the Japanese. The armor is very good. It's actually comfortably tanking Yamato. Speed's good, and it's just a bit high in the detection value. I feel they really should fix that because the Japanese are kind of known for their stealth, or at least they should be. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this.
I've always
I don't know.
played the Japanese ships as defensive, so what I want when I'm playing a Japanese battleship is for ships to come at me, so I can essentially kite away. Not that I really, not like a cruiser way of
Yeah,
kiting,
but
but I
the
want to be
Ismo is
pointing my
different.
bow away from them, showing them the angle of my side, which actually makes it quite hard to penetrate. But I think
Ismo is
it
different, mate.
would be better if. Oh yeah, the Ismo is different, isn't it? Because
The
it's got the
Ismo's got
guns
all
on
the
the
guns in
front.
front, so yeah. And it's got a shell catcher at the back, which means basically it's got a little bit. No matter what you angle, the shells will actually hit the ship and paint at a good angle. That's what I mean by shell catcher. So at the back of the ship, it's not very good, but the front of the ship is where you want to be. So you want to be keeping an angle at the front of the ship for Ismo. So it plays different from a Maggie, whereas you like a kiting play style. It doesn't really play the same. So it's a little bit different kettlefish for that one. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I like I said, I'm not. I have unlocked it. I've not really played it that much, so my opinion is kind of, I've,
Yeah.
I've not really established an opinion on the Ismo yet.
And yeah, I feel we still have that question to go back to. We're talking about the starter thing. You said the starter class for someone in the chat you're mentioning.
Yeah, right, okay, and wow,
We could cover the
thank you,
Z46 that way.
thank you very much for the super chat, Doped Wiki there with the $10. You seem like a really nice guy. I was wondering if you could play a game on stream later and maybe show me the basics, but don't worry if you can't. Right, okay, so myself, Xarkun, and Mr. Monk here, all of us have got big, like huge libraries of basics. I have a series which I will pop in the chat. Basically, this is you sort of come at the come at the wrong kind of the wrong stream, because this is a podcast where we just sort of sit here and discuss things about it, which hopefully you find it interesting. You'll probably pick up quite a few tips. We tend to talk about the sort of more complex issues.
The next topic will be very interesting for you, honestly, if you like battleships.
But I have here. Let me get this playlist up, and I'll drop the link into the chat for you. Stop that.
I recently called Joe Biden political.
Ooh. What are you doing, YouTube?
I've got a tip for a brand new player that I'd like to test out. You two can tell me if you agree with me, but I've had this project in the works myself for a little bit that I've been thinking about doing. The first idea for it is to...
If it's how to train your noob, I have been trying to set this up for ages. So I'm going to poach Doped Wookie before you even think about it.
Well, no. It's an explanation of some basic mechanics in this game, because I don't think this game really gives you that. I think it throws you into a tier 1 cruiser, and it tells you press this button to go forward, this one to go back, this one to aim, this one to shoot, and move the sticks around to steer, and I think that's about the extent of it. Or am I wrong? Does it give you more than that?
It gives you a little bit more than that, but not much more.
It explains torpedoes at tier 2 and how to lead torpedoes. It does... I think it briefly explains the difference between HA and AP. But
it's under the description of the shell, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah,
honestly.
It's pretty basic.
I was thinking about doing something similar as well.
But I don't know if you have Discord. But if you do, the Discord link should be the pinned channel. And I'm just going to say it outright, if you're up for it, I wanted to do a series for a while called, I don't mean it offensively, it's called How to Train Your Noob, which is basically where I want a new player that's recently picked up the game that actually wants to get good. And I'll spend, a couple of hours a week with you. We'll play games together, we'll explain the mechanics, and see how quickly we can get someone to progress.
You do know I've already done this. There's a guy called Calisto.
Calisto doesn't count. Calisto's terrible. You done a bad job there. I want to do a good job.
By the way, Economics, I appreciate it, sir. Likewise.
So
He's in
what?
the chat. He said something lovely. There we go. Yeah.
Well, in all fairness, the only one he can see is me. So I
well.
think he's calling me sexy. In all fairness, I
Probably
definitely
could show myself.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. If you're comfortable to do it, Xarkun, and you want to pop your camera on, I'm more than happy for you to do so. It's the voices. Well, we have the buttery smoothness of Xarkun, the crass Scottishness of the monk, and me. So apologies for fucking that up.
So yeah, Xarkun, you were saying about you're wanting to start a potential new series for starter players. What you're saying? Because we kind of interrupted you there.
Yeah, and don't if you look at those other videos, if you wanna pop a message in there, tell me if you're on Xbox or PlayStation with your gamer tag. I'll get in touch with you, and we don't necessarily have to make videos out of it, but I'll gladly spend a couple of hours with you, sort of showing you the ropes and seeing if we can get you off to a good start on your World of Warships Legends career.
Anyway, yeah.
Career. Right. So on to
Xarkun.
new player tips. So
Okay, we're covering that. Okay.
we'll cover that. Or was Xarkun going to say something? And
I said Xarkun was covering his wee sneak peek thing. We're
oh yes,
here.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So
Xarkun. Apologies.
let him finish
I
that
got
one. Sorry about that.
distracted.
Yes.
Honestly, that's a perfect segue into it, because somebody in the chat here says leading ships is the most important thing to grasp quickly. Sure, but I think you sort of have to pick that up by feel, what happens when you're kind of comfortable in leading your shells. I don't think the game tells you how the two shell types work, the two basic ones, HE and AP. So I've been trying to distill this entire concept down into something simple to grasp, and this is what I've come up with. The smaller the gun size, think destroyers, they've got the smallest guns, cruisers, medium guns relative to battleships, which have the largest. The smaller the gun, the more often you want to shoot high explosive from it, and the other way around with armor piercing. So destroyers should be shooting HE the most, battleships should be shooting AP the most, cruisers should be switching the most for maximum effect. And that is just one tip about the HE and AP that I think is good. I think it's easy to remember. The smaller the gun size, the more HE.
That sounds good. Yeah, I've been thinking of something similar, calling the whole Mastering AP, Mastering HE, a wee short video explaining the benefits of AP, benefits of HE, how to use each one, but just a small segmented, like a 5-minute guide sort of idea of it, of each wee small parts of the game.
So I think the biggest difficulty, particularly for new players, and in all fairness, I think Xarkun, you kind of put it perfectly there with the smaller the guns, the more HE, so destroyers predominantly HE, cruisers mix of both, depending if you're then you get into the heavy cruiser territory. Heavy cruisers should probably use AP a bit more than they use HE, whereas light cruisers use HE a bit more than AP. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. But that sort of gets into how complicated the game is and what targets you're aiming at, and I think what's probably more important is learning not just how to lead your targets, but what you should be aiming for to get the maximum damage. And that's a really, you're getting into like really complicated areas. So a destroyer, you
this
essentially
could be
you essentially just want to hit a destroyer anywhere.
As much as it's a good conversation, we need to
I
try.
think this is a much bigger topic and probably
Yeah.
something that's better for
This
a
could be a
video.
whole podcast on its own. I just got to be careful about that one. That definitely could be. So sorry, Mr. Hyde. What are we discussing right now? Are we covering
Right, so new
starter
player
tips here?
new player tips. So Dorp particularly asked about what lines to start off with. I'm gonna just go out there and say I think your first goal should be to play, maybe pick a nation, and I'd probably suggest the Americans because they tend to be the most rounded group of
They're
ships.
the most forgiving, in my opinion. Yeah, but then again, if you're trying to learn the game quickly, sometimes you want to pick a harder nation, and you kind of throw yourself in the deep end.
Yeah, but if
So
you
there's
start
two ways of
playing,
that
if you
argument.
start playing British cruisers, for example, you're probably going to get pissed off and stop playing the game pretty quickly.
Depends on your mindset, but yeah, like British cruisers are
that is
undeniably hard to play. So you either master it quickly or you get frustrated, and you got to decide for yourself what sort of person you are. Are you going to persist and pursue how to sort that problem, or are you going to get Are you going to be someone that wants to learn easy and then pick up as you
Before
learn
you
to
break my
get
trail of
introduced?
thought, and I'll let you give your opinions, but I would probably start off with the Americans, and I would play the battleships, the cruisers, and the DDs up to tier 5, because it doesn't matter what class you decide to specialize in, like whether you're going to be a DD player, whether you're going to be a cruiser player, whether you're going to be a battleship player. It doesn't matter. If you play all the ship classes, you kind of need to know how your opposition is going to think and how they're going to play to make yourself more effective. So if you want to be a battleship main, you really want to focus on learning and getting at least decent in a DD, so you know what a DD is going to do, you know what a DD is thinking, you know where it's going to send its torps from, because that's going to improve your battleship play immensely, because you're going to learn to turn your ship and change your speed and things like that. But I would focus, like, it doesn't matter which nation you pick a nation, get all of those ships up to tier 5, figure out how they all play, and then kind of pick what you want to focus on. And like, personally, as much as I love the British ships, I would probably suggest leaving the British ships till at least your second or third sort of nation of ships to go for, because the British ships are, I don't think anyone will argue with me that the British ships are the hardest to play, but they're, if you've got them down and you're good at them, they're typically some of the best ships of the tier. But you've got to be really good to do well in them, and if you played them off the bat, it could be a double-edged sword. It could work out really well. You could become an absolutely amazing cruiser player because you've learned off the British ones first, which is so difficult to play. But it could also completely fuck you up. You could hate the game because you've been dev struck in the first 3 minutes of every match you've played.
Yeah. So, Xarkun, do you want to cover a wee brief explanation on your starter guides, starter ship recommendations, or shall I cover that for now?
No, I want to
trying
hear
to
from
think of,
Xarkun next. Come on.
Yeah.
If you're thinking, we'll let Monk go, and then you can sort of interject, or maybe you can just agree or disagree with mine and Monk's opinions, which is absolutely fine.
Or you want to do it, I'm fine either way.
Well, I'm multitasking here. You see, I'm thinking of what, like, am I supposed to recommend a line, like a nation's line for each class, or?
Yeah, well, I'll do my wee bit first, then maybe you'll have a better idea, maybe. Uh, so yeah,
Maybe.
for maybe, yeah, just maybe enough. So yeah, for battleships, I think honestly, I recommend the Japanese battleships to start because I've got the different mindset from Hive. I'm thinking you learn with the hardest or one of the hardest first, and then after you've mastered those, the other lines become easy for you. Then again, as Hive says, double-edged sword. You either get really good or you get frustrated with the game, and it depends on your sort of play style there. Americans are probably the easiest battleship line to start off with. Japanese and maybe probably not. Probably just say the Japanese are probably the hardest battleship line to play. For cruisers, um, probably Americans again, probably the easiest, and then probably the hardest would be. Ooh, I don't know actually. The French are pretty easy as well. I'm honestly not that sure. That probably the British the hardest would probably be the British as well. But again, the Americans are very good overall classes. You've got a lot of forgiving traits in them. You've got a lot of good usability, and if you're just trying to get master things, uh, the Americans are pretty good for most things. But if you're trying to get the extremes to help improve your gameplay, that is something to do. The Japanese are pretty darn hard class, a hard nation to play in general. So they'll help you out with a fair amount of the beginning tactics of the game. Something Hive mentioned earlier on, which is quite good. To get better at battleship play, you should play your destroyers. That's something I took kind of to heart here because if you're playing a battleship and you play a cruiser, the more you play, the more you know the ship you're fighting, the weaknesses and the strengths. If you're playing a cruiser, you start to like islands. And if you're playing a battleship, you want to see the broadside cruisers out. You can see where they might want to go, and then you can ambush them, and vice versa. The more different type of ships you play, the better you are at understanding what the map will be and what the situations will turn out to be, because you can predict their movements. So the more you play different ships, the better you get at understanding the match flow, shall I say? And if once you've mastered that, that's a really effective way to get games won.
Yeah,
So yeah,
knowing your enemy is almost. Actually, I'd argue knowing what your enemy is going to do, or how they intend to play, is
yeah,
more important than how well you know your own ship.
yeah. So by that logic, I'm gonna recommend the Japanese battleship line for starters because it's very hard. And if you're not that sort of person, then do the full American line. And yeah, I would actually recommend playing everything like at least once, getting to at least maybe tier 3 on all of them, and just figuring them all out. And then you realize like, hey, the British battleships have improved HE penetration. They like to fire HE a bit, so maybe I can account for that. And vice versa. The Japanese like to use range at their advantage. Maybe I can use island cover and avoid getting shot by them until I get closer. The Germans like to brawl, and you'll figure this out the more you play of each different nation.
Yeah.
You pick things up, and
I
it's
I
okay if you die.
think the
Yeah,
important point is getting to tier 5, because
you think tier 5?
the low
Yeah.
level ships are kind of. I don't think they really represent how the lines are gonna end
Some
up.
of them do, some of them don't. They do change
But
up, but I do agree with Hive
like
there.
when you
Tier
get
5
to
is the way.
tier 5, usually in most cases, the tier 5 ship will have the same playstyle as the 6, the 7, the 8.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't want to waffle on too much, but
Yeah,
basically,
shut
I'll
up.
start on one more time. Japanese battleships. If you like punishment, and try and play everything at least once, so you get to know how the ship feels. And there we go.
Xarkun, hand the mantle over to you for what would you recommend line wise to start off with?
I'm gonna go with let's go with the Russian battleships for two reasons. Number one, they have really good armor that when you angle it will keep you not damaged extremely well. And at the same time, if you do not angle it, you will get demolished instantly. Their citadels are very exposed. So those two extremes, if you're a newer player, if you're angling the armor of this ship and you're not getting killed, and then you go broadside and you get dev struck. Hopefully you'll learn from that. Plus they have limited damage controls. Another thing for Battleship players to learn early on is not to waste their damage controls. Example, don't put out a single fire. If you've got only a couple of them and you run out of them before the match is over, well, there's a sign that you're not managing them very correctly. So for those two reasons, armor angling, getting rewarded for it, and getting punished harshly for not doing it, and managing damage controls. I'm going to say the Russian. May not be the most conventional
I think that's a good
but
one. Yeah, that's the best of both worlds there.
In all fairness, then, so I'm gonna sum this topic up now. So hopefully, if I get the summing up wrong, you guys let me know. But so from my perspective, so we've all given you different suggestions, by the way, on how to start off. I think you should go for the Americans, purely because the Americans are probably the most forgiving, and they're probably the easiest to the easiest introduction to the game. The ships are pretty forgiving, and they're reasonably well rounded. They've got good armor, they've got good guns, and I personally think that would be a really good starting point. Mr. Monk, on the other hand, is saying, well, he thinks you should start off with the hard ships, because so like the Japanese battleships, I'm going to say the British cruisers in there, maybe the Russian DDs. So by playing the more difficult classes, although it will be a bit of a rougher start, like the learning curve will be a lot higher, but by starting off with the most difficult ships of their class, it'll make you a better player overall. And Xarkun has taken the spot right in the middle, where he's gone for, so like the Russian battleships, for example. So they've got great armor, which is they've got the best armor, so it's an easier introduction to the game. But it's also a pretty good teaching ship, because if you make a mistake in a Russian ship, it's going to hurt you, and you're going to learn fast about how to angle your ship properly to not get wrecked. Am I on the right lines there, or am I completely off base?
No, I think that was spot on. The only things I would say, just to actually add to what I said, is I agree with you about grind up to tier 5 on all the lines first. And also, if I had to do a second choice, I would say the American ships behind the Russians.
Yeah.
I hear children.
Your children. Yes, the little hives have attacked.
I don't want to end the stream, the podcast, but I have to go and deal with something for a couple of minutes. So can I leave you guys continue here? Yeah. So I will be back.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I'll go move on to my issue then, because obviously, like, I'll take over here, so I'll move on to my issue here. My issue was bureaus, and how the bureaus are now changing, because as bureaus currently stand, they are quite boring. You basically, how bureaus currently work as of now is you play 3 ships. You either play a tier of ships, a Pacific ship, or you play, French ship? No, it's just a tier of ships or a Pacific ship regarding the bureau. You have commanders that have to have certain levels, and you have ships, premium or not, and you assign them to bureaus, and that's how they're completed. So overall, it's just time-consuming and very monotonous, in my opinion, and I feel there definitely could be better ways of doing them. I've noticed the most recent update, they did Colbert with the steel, so that's a very interesting way of doing it, and locking him with steel. Maybe they could do a different way of unlocking bureau ships in the future, and how the bureau could be a bit more interactive and less stale, So what are your thoughts on this, Xarkun, honestly, of the bureau? Because I feel the bureau could definitely use a rework.
I don't know I don't know what the rework would be, but yeah, I I agree. I think they need to not put the legend. I think they need to untie the legendary tier from the bureau and
Mm,
put it onto the ends of the tech trees. I think these
I agree.
legendary tier ships, you should grind to them.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree.
They could use the bureau though for things like, the birthday missions or whatever, or the
Yeah.
missions that gave you all those permanent camos, that kind of thing. The bureau mechanic for it seems okay.
They
But
could, the treasure hunt. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt there, but the treasure hunt, how we have the current web event of the treasure hunt?
yeah,
That could be like a bureau system. You play 3 battles and you get these things, these keys or something like that, and you can use that to unlock certain things for the bureau or something like that. That would be not a bad idea of doing it, maybe.
maybe.
You
I
know?
just
I don't know.
like these are the highest tier ships in the game that come out of the bureau, the legendary tier ships, and really all you have to do, you don't have to put any effort into it. You just have to put
No.
time. You just have to start a project and it'll research till completion so long as you log in often enough to keep the research going. Like that's it. And
Yeah.
that's how you get the
The most
highest tier
powerful
ships in the
ships.
games.
Yeah, yeah. You log in once every 24 hours. Excuse me. Once every 24 hours, and you don't even need to put the ships on. It'll take you a longer time, but assuming you have the commander assigned and the ships assigned, you'll get your ship. You can choose to boost it with doubloons, which is again a way to make money for the game. And end of the day, that's a company. End of the day, as much as like to moan about these things, that's how things work. It's a free to play game for a reason. So, but yeah, I do think the bureau is just simply just as things currently stand, it's just too boring and could really use a rework. I think Xarkun's suggestion of untying the legendary ships to bureau is a very good one. So the current legendary ships we currently have will probably stay as bureau ships, and then any future ships could be released by different means, possibly by grinding out the tier 8s. So that would be nice. But I'm just trying to think of suggestions what we could do to fix the bureau. That's a hard thing about it, really. We could use it like a web event, as you said. That's not a bad idea. Like as I was saying, the web event where you have like you play a certain amount of battles and you do certain conditions and you unlock sections of the bureau, and you could fix the bureau by unlocking enough sections of the bureau. Maybe like achieve 5 Krakens over the course of da 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 da, or achieving high calibers or Confederates, maybe medals, or maybe certain scenarios that you have to accomplish, and you can like maybe like some sort of a grid system for the bureau. I don't know, but there certainly could use some work. I just think the bureau as it stands is currently just not very enjoyable.
I mean,
I feel this
I'll
is
put
becoming
it in a
right.
what?
So I feel this could be turning into a bit of a rant here. I'm like trying to be careful about that. Yeah.
I mean, I'll put it in harsher terms if you want me to. If you like, just
Yeah.
if you think about the bureau mechanic, it's like one of those time-gated things on, have you ever played
Yeah.
mobile games? Like
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 yeah. Yeah.
really monetized ones, and you gotta wait for like X amount of real world time to get whatever item you want. But you can throw some real money at it and speed up the time. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
essentially what the bureau is. Like the only way to fix it, I think, is to do away with the whole system, rebuild it
Maybe.
from the ground up. It could be called the bureau still, but the mechanics would have to be not what they are.
Yeah, I have to agree. Maybe make it like tied to operations. Maybe like have an operations mode, and if you fill all the conditions in operations mode, you could unlock said ship or unlock said camos or so forth. Like I think the bureau as it is, I agree with Zarkin here. I understand. I don't think it's very good, and I don't know how we could fix it honestly. So the best way would possibly to just completely revamp it. Maybe you
Do you
can just
know PC has the bureau, or they have something
yeah.
called the bureau, but what it is you reset a tech tree line and you grind it from tier 1 to tier 10 to get what's called research points, and then you can use those in the store to buy ships like the Ohio, for example. That's a bureau ship on PC.
Mm-hmm.
So it could, well, I don't know if that system's good. It's very grindy, and you can
Probably
just use
yeah.
global XP to boost back up the line after you reset it. So that's probably not better. It'd have
What
to
you
be
could do
something
with
different.
that, what you could do with that, you could have a single bureau project that's constantly running, or maybe just a constant bureau project that's accumulating these research points you speak of. And you have other side bureau missions. This could be your main bureau mission, being the main bureau tick rate. And using that point, you could use that to buy certain camels or certain like an extra store like the Forge. You could have that's as a constant bureau tick, just a constant single project that's always active. And you could have side
Maybe.
missions that are easier to accomplish that actually require a lot more interactiveness. So maybe Yamato, for example, to unlock the Yamato, you could have to achieve so many wins in Japanese boats or whatever it is, and you have a constant tick rate, and maybe you could use that tick rate to speed things along or something like that, instead of having multiple projects. I don't know. There's a lot to be said about this, honestly. There's a lot
There
of stuff you can
is.
do.
I would say what Doug35 says in the chat. Also, don't waste resources putting commander past level 8. If you mean don't waste resources doing that because one of the commanders is a patron on a bureau project, then yeah, don't waste your
Yeah.
resources
No.
just to boost that.
That's a common trap that a lot of players do. If you don't like a commander, if you don't use a commander, you won't feel you're obliged to level them up because the as I said, the patron, as Xarkun saying, for the bureau is asking this person needs to be rank 12 or rank 8 or so forth. Promotion orders are not easy to come by. Neither insignia is even more so. And leveling up your commanders is a massive spike in your ship's performance early game. A base commander versus a fully upgraded commander, there's a massive differences there. So you need to be careful about how you're spending it. And that's a very common trap new players get into. They invest all these promotion orders in these commanders, and they're not even necessarily using them. So that's a big problem that Bureau causes. I just don't think Bureau causes any. I think it causes more problems than good, as things currently stand.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great system.
We'll have to see what they can do about that in the future, honestly. Yeah, they do say the Bureau is fine, but yeah, the Bureau is being. You can see evidence of the Bureau being reworked though, because we had the Colbert for steel, we had the Stalingrad was one of the first major changes that they thought to bring Bureau, because they thought let's just avoid the Bureau for the legendary ship and make it completely global XP. But I think 2 million was too extreme for that in that regard. 2 million is just too extreme for a legendary tier ship in terms of global XP. It's a little bit too pricey. That reminds me as
Maybe.
well. Yeah, sorry, you're saying?
I don't know that the Colbert is all that different. I guess you can boost the segments with credits though, rather than doubloons. So I guess yeah,
That
that
would
is
be nice.
different.
That's nice. Yeah. Something to note as well about global XP. What do you think the helping is going to be worth?
I don't know. I mean, if tier 7 premiums are 750,000 and legendary ones are 2 million, then tier 8 ones 1 million, 1.25 million.
That's I'm
1.5?
thinking 1 million to 1.25. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there, I would
Because it's
think.
been 250,000 increase by tier each tier, because it's 750,000 for tier 7s, as you said. It's 500. Is it not 500,000? What's it for Atlanta? Do you know the
I
global XP cost for Atlanta?
I think it is 500,000.
It's either 500 or 550. I know the increase is by 250 for the tier 7, so I think it's 500. Yeah, so it's 500,000 for Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. 600. 600. There's someone in chat saying it's 600. It
Maybe it
might be,
is. It could,
but
it could be.
I don't think it'll be any more than 1.25 or 1 million global XP. I think that's too expensive if it goes past that point. My suggestion is probably 1 million or 1.25 global XP for a tier 7, a tier 8 global XP ship. That's what I
1
think.
million even seems reasonable to me.
It does seem reasonable, but yeah. I 100% agree. 1 billion does seem reasonable there. So yeah, I think that's interesting there. I think the Bureau could definitely use a rework. I just think, as things currently stand, it's just a little bit too boring. I think they could use a little bit more spice in that regard. And
It
yeah,
is really
yeah.
boring. That's why it took me till like a day ago to get the Des Moines because I didn't interact with the project at all. Of course, the bots, they're here. This
we
wouldn't
fixed
be
this. We
anything
fixed
to do
this.
with
Okay.
World of Warships Legends without them.
No, it's fine. Fixed it. Anyway, yeah, I feel I've covered my topic, which is a little bit unfortunate because we're still waiting on Hive, which leaves us to discuss. I believe it's your issue, the battleship issue.
What
Is
is the
your biggest one?
battleship issue?
Now, the battleship issue is, if I remember correctly, the battleship issue is how battleships are currently being played and what we agree or disagree how they're done. Like
Oh,
when is
yeah.
tanking effective? When is tanking just taking damage? What's the difference between tanking effectively or taking damage in a battleship and positioning and so forth? So yeah, I'll leave you to rant about that for a wee bit. So I'll chip in
Okay.
again.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll just describe the way that I see battleships played most of the time. They spawn in and they want to go forward a little bit. It seems like they only know forward and reverse. They spawn in, they go forward, they spot the enemy, they stop, they shoot only their front guns at the enemy, and then they reverse. And they don't move around the map at all. And then you hear things or you see things on the internet, forums, like people complaining HE spam is too much of a problem. The enemy team's never given me broadside. How do I kill these
Yeah.
cruisers, torpedoes, destroyers?
They seem to favour bow tanking. I've noticed that everyone seems to prefer not to angle in battleships. They like to bow tank, and bow tanking is a problem. Is certainly a problem. Not everything's meant to bow tank.
No, I in a lot of cases, getting stuck bow. Actually, I'm gonna go further than that. In any case where you are facing more than one enemy ship, as in more than one enemy ship can shoot at you, getting stuck bow into that is a mistake. I don't care what class of ship you're in, cruiser, battleship, destroyer, whatever. Getting stuck bow in is a mistake. If you are up against superior numbers, you need to have a way to disengage. And the only ways you have to disengage when you bow tank is A, reverse, or B, turn and give broadside to whatever enemy you're facing.
Yeah.
Neither one of these are good. Both of them
play-
will result
yeah.
in your death.
To play devil's advocate, though, some ships are focused on around that playstyle where you need to have your guns up front.
Yes. Yes.
So some boats
Actually,
are better for that, such
yes.
as maybe Jean Bart. But even then, you could turn your guns with Jean Bart. But like Jean Bart, Richelieu, Dunkirk, a lot of the French BBs are quite good there. Maybe
Yes.
even Lenin. You know, there's certain boats that there's always exceptions to rules in World of Warships. There's actually quite a few, but
There
generally,
are.
Xarkun is 100% correct in this. I believe you shouldn't be bow tanking in most situations. There's certain ships that specialize in it, but there's a lot of ships you don't want to be bow tanking in. Nelson was raised in our Discord chat there. I believe Nelson's not a very good bow tanker. You know, I think you can expand on that because considering it's one of your favorite ships.
Yeah. I was gonna the caveat there though is bow tanking is a mistake when you're facing superior numbers because it doesn't give you the ability to disengage. But in ships like Roma, like somebody says in the chat, or Lenin, or Ismo, or those kind of things, if you can guarantee a 1 versus 1 fight, and you're not like suicidally close enough for the enemy to be able to ram you, because I'm sorry, if people are ramming you in your battleships, you are getting too close. This is a fault of your own positioning.
As much as you want to blame the person ramming, if you're giving them the opportunity to ram, then you're almost equally at fault as well. So you need to be aware of that. That's down to your own positioning when you're getting rammed. As much as I love to say otherwise.
Yeah, it sucks when people ram you, although it's a
Never a
really
fun
good
experience.
play if you're like almost a dead ship and you got a battleship 2 kilometers away from you, you should ram that
Yeah,
battleship, like do it.
there's situations where you should be doing ramming. There's always the other situations where you're full health and you've got plenty. You could potentially win the fight against the other BB. Ramming's never a good option for that. But when you're low health or you know you're not going to win the fight, then ramming is 100% the best way of doing it. And you should always be prepared for that, whether it's the best idea for the player you're fighting or not. So yeah, it's interesting. Basically what we've been saying about tanking is not as effective as a lot of people think it is, and as against a superior force is what you're saying. It's just not. It's actually detrimental to your ship in most cases.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck bow in because you can't disengage. Like that's the reason. And
Yeah,
you want to be able to disengage against superior forces in every class of ship. Like if you take your battleship in there and I don't know, you spawn on a flank, there's 2 battleships and a cruiser in front of you, and your first choice is I'm going to push straight into all 3 of these ships. You're going to take a lot of damage. You might survive for quite a long time too. And you might consider this tanking, but no. This is not tanking. This is you going out there and being a damage pinata. There's a difference.
yeah,
This is not how you want to use your battleship. What you want to do in a battleship is you want to find places on the map. You want to look around the map. You want to look at what your team's doing and what the enemy team is doing. And you want to find places on the map that the enemy is giving broadside to. Then you want to sail your battleship into that place and use all of its guns to punish those broadsides. A lot of the time that can be in the center of the map. Certain ships are really good at that. And a lot of time it can be on the flanks. But I also see people say like, oh, this game was not good because the enemy team didn't give me enough broadside. No, 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 no. You got it backwards. You got to go out there. You got to put yourself in a place where you find the broadsides. The enemy team doesn't give them to you unless
yeah,
they're just
yeah. Fair enough.
potatoes.
Yeah, and the thing about crossfire is, sorry, the thing about broadsides is it brings the conversation of crossfires into play. So, what a crossfire is essentially is you have an enemy ship to your left and an enemy ship to your right, meaning you can't effectively bow tank or angle against both of them. You have to pick one or the other. If you can get the enemy team in a crossfire, then you almost basically automatically win the game because when you catch broadsides in a battleship, that is where you get the mammoth damage. That's where you get the high damaging there. And catching crossfires and getting the enemy ships into crossfires is how games are won. So, as Xarkun is saying there, you want to try and find the broadsides. This is the thing, it's a team game, so it's not always just up to you to find them, because the enemy team, once they notice where you are, they can angle up towards you. But if they're angling up towards you, maybe your friendly teammates could catch their broadside because you could be creating a crossfire with your teammates. So creating crossfires is how you find the broadsides, guaranteed, no matter how skillful a player you're fighting. So
Yeah.
that's how you capitalize on your broadsides there. When it comes to tanking, you want to be angling your ship as much as possible. Depending on certain ships, do better other things. Like, for example, the Nelson is actually one of the best angled battleships in the game, I think. One of the best angled battleships for tier 6. If you angle in the Nelson, you're very hard to kill.
I think the Nelson is probably one of the best battleships in Tier 6, but actually that
Yeah.
leads me to think of something I wanted to add to this, which is that the game is designed in such a way that by the time you get to Tier 7, you should kind of know that bow tanking shouldn't be your first resort in a battleship, because every single battleship under Tier 7, at Tier 6, and Tier 5, every single one of them, without any exceptions, can have their bows overmatched by 15-inch guns or larger.
Yeah.
And 15-inch and larger is pretty common at Tier 6 especially. You've even got a couple of them in Tier 5. So every single ship beneath tier 7. Like, you should have learned by then that you can't simply point your bow at the enemy and that's it. No, you got to angle your armor. There's a difference.
Just to explain what overmatch is real quick. Overmatch is when you have a gun caliber large enough to bypass the effectiveness of the armor plating that your ship possesses. So 15-inch guns, which is 380mm guns in this situation, can overmatch 25mm of plating. You calculate the overmatch value of your gun by dividing the caliber by 14.3. In this situation, it means regardless of what angle you present, the shell will pass through the armor plating, ignoring any bouncing, any chance to bounce the shell. As Xarkun says correctly, every tier 6 battleship and tier 5 and so forth is overmatchable by 15-inch guns, which is 380mm guns. Even some of them who have icebreakers, such as Gneisenau, Sinop, and what else has an icebreaker, honestly? I think
Even
the
Scharnhorst.
Scharnhorst as well, yes. They all have 25mm noses, even the icebreakers. So you can overmatch every single one, which means angling is the way to go, especially for tier 6. And again, as Xarkun says correctly here, if you finish the tier 6 grind and you're on to tier 7, tier 6 should have taught you that angling is better than bow tanking. But you can angle a tier 3 battleship can actually angle against a Yamato, but it can't bow tank a Yamato. Very, very few of them can. The Ganget can actually, but that's a whole different stock. That's a different topic. But you know, the Ganget's a very strong bow. But yes, angling is the way to go because we see this a lot of the time. This is why I'm raising this point, and you know, we want to discuss this because you know, as community contributors, we play these games, and you know, so it's everyone else in chat as well. We all play this game. We all want it to do well, and we see so much of these bow tanking battleships. And it's a big problem. And you know, yeah. Sorry, you're saying, Mrs. Arkin? I mean to.
And I was just, yeah, all I was going to say was these ships are the same ones that get on the forums and tell you that destroyers are overpowered and cruiser HE spam is overpowered. Yeah. Some cruisers are overpowered, some destroyers are overpowered. Generally speaking, HE spam is not a problem, and neither are destroyer torpedoes.
Should we discuss how to counter HE spam there? I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but should we discuss how to actually counter HE spam in a battleship? This is quite an interesting topic, honestly.
Yes.
Hi.
Do you want to go first, or should I? Oh, Hive's back. Hello.
Oh, Hive's back. There we go. Well, I don't know if Hive's... Hello? Hive? You still here, buddy?
Yep.
Okay.
What are we talking about? HE spam?
Yes, how to counter it in a battleship.
See, this is a difficult one because I actually... I'm gonna reference it again, as I reference it fairly frequently. I done some. We lost Mr. Monk. I'm sure he'll jump back in a second. I actually done quite an extensive bit of research into HE and fire damage and how it all works. So I think I'm not saying this for sure, but I think I've probably got like maybe not the most, but a lot of knowledge on this. So if you guys want to talk about it first, and then I can sort of potentially interject with some heavy maths.
What you missed, Hive, just to highlight, what you missed, Hive, we discussed my project regarding the bureaus. We all think, me and Xarkun, agree that the bureau as it currently stands is just simply too boring and uninteresting, and it could use a potential revamp or just straight up removal, because the way things are, we just found it's just too monotonous, and there's not really any interaction with the bureau as it currently is.
So I know you guys have already talked about this, so if I give my opinion really quickly and you guys can just go, oh yeah, that's what we said, or shut the hell up, Hi. So firstly,
just going to get back up.
So firstly, I think to be able to unlock a bureau project, you must have at least, at present, the tier 7 version, but later on, the tier 8 version of the ship. I think
Yeah,
that
we
should be
we
a
also
thing.
discussed that as well. We're seeing detaching legendary ships from the bureau.
A secondary sort of potential thought is that if you set it up that way, have missions but associated with the tier 7/8 version of that ship, so you could potentially speed up the process
Yeah,
of
that
that.
sounds reasonable. We discussed something I said like for the in order to unlock the Yamato as an example, we could. Sorry, guys who've already heard all this before. I'm just refreshing this for Mr. Hive. We could maybe get so wins in Japanese boats or Japanese battleships for the Yamato because obviously it's a legendary Japanese BB, and vice versa for the either Montana or you name it. Shimikaze. You could get TDs or whatever it is. Having specific nation tied or ship specific missions for the legendary ships or something for like a bureau like that. Hello?
I think
Yes.
legendary ships should be sort of. I don't want to say, I don't think they should be locked behind any sort of skill wall, but you should have to like at least prove a significant amount of playtime in that type of ship.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think that just suggests that the most simple and elegant solution to that issue is put them on the ends of the tech tree, so you grind to them from tier 8.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the best way of doing it, and which basically means you get rid of the bureau and use it for something else.
Maybe you could use it for premium legendary tier ships. I don't know.
Dad, damn it! No worries, mate.
All right. Well,
So
HE spam then?
HE spam, yeah. So we're jumping ahead a little bit here, guys. A little bit discombobulated here, but hopefully it's okay, guys, because family problems. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes kids go first.
They want
So yeah.
clarification on the HE problem in the chat. They say, is HE damage the problem or fire damage? Because there
Well,
is a
I think
difference between the two.
yeah, I feel the problem that we're discussing, and at least what I want to discuss, is how to counter HE shells hitting your ship. So I would just say that would cover both of them. But fire damage is a whole different. That's a bit managing and damage control, you know,
Yeah.
because you can't really control where the cruiser or destroyer hits your boat. That's up to them. That's their aiming. So you can't really defend yourself against, you know. It's difficult to say. Well, it's a weird one. You can't make them hit a part that will shatter the HE, as opposed to hit somewhere where the HE will pen. You know, you can't really decide that. But I'm saying I think, in my opinion, there's three ways to counter HE in a battleship. One is to use an island and hug the island. As much as cruisers can arc over islands, they can't shoot through them. That's one way to counter HE. There's another way to counter HE is to go undetected, which is perfectly viable for some battleships, especially now we get the concealment mod, you know,
Yeah.
and we have access to commanders like Kondo as well. You could go storytelling of monk, yes. You could go undetected. You could hug an island, which is perfectly fine. It's actually very advisable for certain battleships like the Germans. They use islands to get closer. So you could do
Mm-hmm.
that. You could go undetected. You could hug an island. You could actually sail out of the range of the cruiser. That's something to note as well. Not all cruisers, not possible for every single cruiser, but you can actually sail out of the range of some cruisers. Atlanta is famous for having such short range. So you could just simply sail out of the way. And there's last but not least, which I quite like, the final way to deal with HE spam is to kill the HE spammer. that's a surefire way of getting rid of the HE spam, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. So
It's
what
the
would you say?
BBs.
What would you say to counter HE spam? Shall I say?
Um, plane fixer guy in the chat, I could
Yeah.
sort of spring off this. His point earlier wasn't that HE or fire is a problem,
Yeah.
but battleships drinking the flammable cannoneer Kool-Aid who tend to push.
I can.
So,
Yeah.
well, yes. So that is the problem. Not necessarily the flammable cannoneer part, but the battleships who push forward without thought. The same kind of battleships I was describing earlier, that their first
Yeah.
resort is they see multiple enemies, they sail toward the enemies until a certain, I don't know when, then they stop, and then they sort of reverse away from them while shooting only their front guns. This is why you have a problem with HE spam. HE spam is a threat to you primarily if you push into it. The same way that torpedoes are. You wouldn't push your battleship into a torpedo or into a destroyer. You should not be pushing your battleship into a stuck-in cruiser that is HE spamming you. You got to move your battleship around the map, and you can avoid the HE spam by sailing away from the cruiser, using islands as cover, breaking line of sight. This is partly why I say concealment is important in battleships, and ultimately by killing the HE spammer.
Yeah, killing the HE spammer. You guys mentioned EOP in your HE argument. EOP is regarding your penetration of your HE shells, and that is to do with being hit with HE shells. You can't actually prevent the damage you can't actually reduce the damage you take from actually hold on, let me reword this really carefully here. HE damage is not nice for battleships, but fire damage is 100% healable. HE damage, you can heal a good portion of it, and I believe correctly, how much can you heal of armor piercing damage? Is it like 10%? No, it's not 10%. It's like 33. No, what's the value? There's a value, specific value for that. You know,
I want to
like,
say it's a straight 50%.
It's 10% you can heal back for citadel damage.
Yeah.
It's 30% of AP damage.
There we go.
90% of fire damage.
It's 100% fire damage.
No.
100% fire and blood.
Only 90% of fire damage you can heal.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's 100%.
No, it's 90.
Okay, I'll trust your word on that one.
It's like I said,
as I'm saying, I'll trust your word on that one.
really researched this topic.
I will trust your word on that one because Hive's done an extensive one, and plane fixer guy made a good point, Mr. Hive. He mentioned people drinking the Kool-Aid, flammable candy or Kool-Aid, which we tend to push. And I've read your post on fire damage, so this brings a really good segue into your fire damage discussion, whether you should bring flammable cannoneer or not.
Why? So essentially,
When you come back to
I have
HE.
there's sort of really like two main schools of thought on this. So, firstly, I think the biggest issue with fire damage and farming damage with HE, I think HE does legitimately do it does a bit too much tick damage. So it's 2% of your ship's maximum health every second. So up to 4 fires. So bear with me, let me just find my little spreadsheet because I can't remember all the fire damage stats.
I thought it was 0.03%
Oh no,
of your
yes,
ships.
you are
I'm
right.
pretty, yeah.
So I'm looking,
Hive, are you
I've just
sure?
got to it here. So it's 0.03% times by the number of fires. And against battleships particularly, it's times by 60 seconds. So
you get a minute
potentially you can score 623,520 damage against a Montana, which is most of its hit points.
You're basically
just
doing
by setting 4 fires.
Yeah, 72% of a battleship's health. So if you get a full fire duration for all 4 fires, if I'm not mistaken, Hive.
Yeah, which is kind of ridiculous. So with fire, like I particularly set my example to the Montana, you can reduce the maximum damage you could possibly take from 62,000 to 37,000. Obviously, with the ability to heal back 90% of that as well. So, but I think the real sort of issue with fire damage, the only reason why light cruisers can be so effective and cause so much damage is because I think cruisers have too much range. When you've got cruisers that have the same firing range, sometimes even further than a battleship, you remove that ability for a battleship to really counteract getting spammed with HE. And the sort of, to add to that, the fact that cruisers have such a long firing range, what you tend to get is your cruisers will be hanging back at the distance of your battleships, so they're not pushing forward, they're not spotting DDs, which obviously it's the DDs keeping the battleships spotted, which allows them to get farmed behind islands so much. So, like, inherently, like, really speaking, I don't think there is actually anything wrong with the damage that HE should do, but it's just the way the game is played that sort of allows it to happen.
Hive, just a quick reminder here. Someone's asking about the HE damage. How much HE damage is healable standard? Like the standard on those ships again.
90% of HE damage and fire damage is different.
Yes.
So bear with me. Let me just double check it.
I'm almost certain you did say it's 90%, but I'm at that point where I'm dying on that hill. I'm pretty sure flood damage and fire damage is all 100% healable.
Right.
Fire damage is HE penetration damage might be like 90%.
HE penetration might be 90%, but I'm pretty sure fire and flood damage is 100% healable.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I didn't think it's 90, Hive. I really don't. Like, that's one of the things that I'm pretty sure about. But yeah, while Hive's discussed... Sorry, you're saying? Sorry.
I was going to say, I will say one thing. Hive was talking about fight fire with fire, taking down 10% of fire damage. There are two commanders in the game that are the absolute pinnacle of battleship commanders if you want to avoid fire damage specifically. And they are Megatron and Optimus Prime. In their first row of skills, they have Revocation Protocol, which
These
reduces
are event
fire...
commanders, by the way, guys. Event commanders.
Yeah, the Transformers, Megatron and Optimus Prime. That Revocation Protocol, it does something to the spotter plane, but that's useless. Or not the spotter plane, the fighter plane, I think. I don't know. Whatever it does to the plane, useless. But the other effect is it reduces fire burn duration by something like, I can't remember how long it is, by a certain percentage, and it's significant. And if you put Revocation Protocol fully maxed on a battleship, American, German, whatever, and the damage control mod, you can reduce the fire burn time on a battleship from 60 seconds to 38 seconds. That's a massive amount of hit points that you're saving.
Is this including AL Heppers? Her fire chance reduces fire damage, I believe.
So I have some
I guess you could combine that too.
On this. So I found potentially, I could be wrong, but this is like a
that's a good point,
good
Mr. Vance,
anti-fire build. So using Optimus Prime, you can run not one for nuisance, firefighter. Beepley has refractory, which gives -8%, and Shea gives 5%, which gives you total fire resistance of 33%. Now, something I think people really don't understand when talking about like fire chances is your ship tier depends on your fire chance, and it's quite complicated. So I'll tell you what, I'll just quickly run through
just
how
answer
fire
a point
chance
before you
works.
start. Yeah, just to I quickly answer a point before you start that.
Oh, and
Mr.
just to
Bass in the
confirm,
chat.
actually, no.
Sorry.
So Mr. Monk is right. So it's 10% of citadel damage for battleships that can be repaired. 30% of citadel damage for cruisers. Regular AP penetrations, it's 50%. But there are some exceptions, like the Warspite can actually repair 60% of AP penetrations. But it is 100% of the fire and flood damage that you can repair. So yeah, you were right. Whereas I thought it was 90. It's 90% of HE
Yeah.
penetration
Yeah.
damage, but 100%
Yeah.
of fire and flood.
Yeah. Mr. Vass was saying, these event commanders we wouldn't recommend to newer players. Unfortunately, even if we wanted to, some of the event commanders are not available. Like Megatron and Optimus Prime, as you said there, or the optimal or highest anti-fire build, they're just simply not available. At least as currently things are, they're not permanent commanders. They're not commanders you can get in the store for Commander XP. They're not always available. These are event commanders we're talking about. But you have alternative options.
Yeah, and this is one thing that kind of bugs me, because the game really doesn't explain fire chance, how any of that works. So all of your ships have a base fire resistance. So this depends on your tier. So tier 1 and tier 2 ships have 0 fire resistance, or in the calculation their fire resistance is 1, which is equal to 0. And as you go up the tiers, depending on the hulls, they change. So for example, tier 3, you start off with a rating of 9.3 fire resistance, which is like a 7% reduction. If you got the hull B, it's 0.9, which is like 10%. All the way up to legendary tier, which, all with the exception of the Yamato, have a fire resistance rating of 0.6, which is actually a 40% reduction in fire chance. So when your Worcester tells you you've got 17% fire chance, it doesn't actually have a 17% fire chance. It would have a 10% fire chance against a legendary tier ship, or a 11% fire chance against a tier 7 with the hull upgrade. So there's all these other things to take into account. But when you increase your chances of getting set on fire by picking flammable cannoneer, it doesn't increase it by 13%. It increases it by like 23% because of that multiplication factor that's in there against your base hull reload, against your base hull fire resistance chance.
So,
like I said, this is a really complicated topic.
It's a very complicated thing, and I'm worried that people are not going to 100% follow it, because I'm not 100% sure myself. It's very difficult without seeing the actual, on paper.
Essentially, if you go for a full anti-fire build, you can get your base fire chance resistance down to like 0.38, I think, which is the best one that I have found. So, whereas if a ship like the Worcester,
the Yamato has a
17% fire chance, it's actually brought down to 6.35 when you go through all the maths, and then essentially you can work out what your fire chance is. So if you build against fire on a Montana, and this is against the Worcester, I can't pick out the numbers for any random ship because there's a lot of maths involved. So if you're running flammable cannoneer, your chance of being set on fire by a single salvo from a Worcester is 72%. 2 salvos is 92%. You're pretty much guaranteed to get a fire.
So is it worth running cannoneer?
If you build anti-fire into your ship as much as you can, so that would be using Prime, having Beepley and Shear as your inspirations, you reduce that single salvo percentage down to 43, and then 67 for 2. So to guarantee a fire, I consider guaranteed fire anything over 90%, because obviously it's statistical, it's randomly generated. So yes, one salvo could set 3 fires if you're incredibly unlucky, but then you could take 10 salvos and not receive 1. But if we're talking guaranteed fire chance, which would be like 90%, if you build anti-fire, it should take roughly 5 salvos from a Worcester with a full fire build to set you on fire, whereas if you run flammable cannoneer, 2 salvos is pretty much guaranteed
So
to set a
it's
fire.
either 5 salvos or 2 salvos, or a Pacific ship example here in the Worcester and Montana. So what you're saying here is, in order to guarantee a fire from a Worcester, assuming RNG and probabilities on your side, they need to land at least 5 salvos on you when you're running an anti-fire build.
Yeah.
So would you say it's worth it running flammable cannoneer or not?
Well, so this is where you get into the problems with fire damage and running anti-fire builds. So if you're running flammable cannoneer and you're going all out accuracy, to switch to an anti-fire build, you're missing out on 8% total range, 5% to your shell grouping, 10% to your AP shell damage. You have slower turret traverse. You're also losing shell grouping and dispersion by having a Cunningham and Scharnhorst as your inspirations. So you're giving up an awful lot for that fire chance reduction. So essentially, there's 2 choices build wise. So you can either stick with flammable cannoneer and go all out on attack, on basically like focusing your accuracy, your shell grouping, because you want to kill them as fast as humanly possible. But to use that effectively, you've got to play smart. You can't just sit there out in the open, bow tanking everything, because a cruiser is going to get into a position and is going to wreck you.
We were discussing that. Yeah, we were discussing why bow tanking is honestly bad for most ships.
If you want to bow tank, if that's what you want to do, then you need to go anti-fire and you need to give up all of the other perks of an accuracy build on a battleship, which is fine. If you do that, you remember you're probably not going to do as much damage as you typically would, but you're going to be more beneficial for your team if you actually play in a tank role. So there's benefits to it, but we all know most people play this game solo, and most people are going to be far too selfish to run an anti-fire build and tank all the damage whilst the rest of the team get in position and deal all the damage. So yeah, it's like
it's a catch-22 sort of thing. Personally, I think you should be running cannoneer because of the points we discussed earlier. There's about 4 different points of how to counter HE spam.
Yeah,
we discussed with me and Xarkun.
So if you
can counter
smart,
the HE spam, you shouldn't need to run an anti-fire build. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Essentially, if you play smart, if you position yourself well, like don't sit there and reverse, because most cruisers have the range that they can find an island to get behind and wreck you. You need to be moving between cover. You need to be getting around the flanks. And if that's something that you're capable of doing in a battleship, don't go anti-fire. Go full accuracy, and you'll do well more times than you'll do bad. But yeah,
Sorry, Xarkun, do you wanna make your point of reference here? What, after hearing all of that, which is quite a complicated, not a lot of maths there, honestly. I'm not sure everyone was following that, but it's okay, because, we can explain it afterwards. What would you think about running anti-flammable cannoneer in your battleship build?
It depends on the ship and what you want to do with it.
Well, that's true for everything, yeah.
I think, like, flammable cannoneer is kind of essential for...
I agree.
For like the Japanese battleships, the American battleships, maybe even the British battleships. And the reason for this is because these battleships are not your brawling kind of battleships. They are not the ones you want to push in. You want to be playing them at medium or longer ranges. You want to be moving them to different parts of the map where you can get the broadsides of the enemy ships. And for that, you need range and accuracy. So you want flammable cannoneer, and you want the skill at the bottom of those battleship commanders that buffs the range. And then on other ships, like, say, the Germans or the Russians, these are ships that are designed to push in, you know? They want to push in, they want to get close, and they want to brawl. So for those, you don't really want flammable cannoneer. You don't want to increase your fire chance. And the range also matters less. So that's what I would say.
I agree, and that comes back to the 3 points that me and Xarkun the 4 points me and Xarkun mentioned about how to counter HE. I'll be quite quick with this because you already discussed it. Basically, using island cover to avoid the HE spam. Cruisers can shoot over islands depending on the arcs they have and the abilities they have, but there's no cruiser in this game that can shoot through an island, so you can always use that. You can break detection if it's possible. You can spec into concealment for battleships. It's more helpful than you think. You can also use range and leave the actual range of the cruiser, though it's not always possible with certain cruisers, as I've mentioned before. Certain cruisers have obscene amounts of range, and this is more of a Legends problem, I feel. Cruisers have excessive amounts of range. I feel that could be tuned at one point in the future. And then finally, last but certainly not least, you could always kill the said HE spammer. So, obviously the last option's ideal, but whether you can do it or not is a different question entirely.
The ultimate counter is to start playing radar cruisers and killing DDs. If you kill DDs, you remove the eyes of the island hugging HE spammers. And when they lose the ability, when they lose their eyes, they can't do any damage.
Yeah.
And when they can't do any damage, they'll stop playing HE cruisers, and then you can go back to your battleships and have fun. But yeah, cruisers are underplayed. In all fairness, like a lot. I've seen so many games with 5 DDs, so many games with 5 battleships. How many games do you see with 5 cruisers?
There's very few. Yes. But that could be a different podcast discussion, honestly. What were you saying, Xarkun? Sorry.
I don't remember now.
God damn it, Hive. But no, if you don't have the eyes,
I don't know.
Yeah. That's what I mean. The 4 ways to counter HE. Go dark. If you can go undetected, they can't shoot what they can't see. Island cover, breaking line of sight, as Xarkun said.
Put in the concealment mod on your battleships. That's a huge change to the game, with them all having concealment mods. And now you can get most of your battleships down to the same kind of concealment range as cruisers.
Yes. So what are you saying, Xarkun? You remembered your point?
Did I? Yes. Somebody, maybe it was Doug earlier in the chat, somebody made a really salient point that ties into your discussion about concealment and all that, which is destroyers. They die within the first 5 minutes or less of the match. And
this could be a whole different topic. Could be. But I'm listening. Sorry, continue.
I'll boil it down to this. If you want to get really good at this game, get good at playing destroyers, because they are the ones that sort of set the tempo and rhythm of the game, and without them, your team is blind. And I was probably going to make a larger point about the value of concealment, but I don't know.
I feel we've covered it, honestly. I feel we've covered that.
I'd like to reiterate Xarkun's point that he's 100% right. It's the destroyers that win the games. Whichever team has the best destroyer players typically wins.
And that reverts back to a good point, by the way. That reverts back to an early point about starting classes and starting guides. Me and Hai both said you should play all the classes. That way you get to know how each class performs and what they do in the battlefield. Yeah?
I couldn't agree more. because it was one of my points.
It can relate back to that point. Sorry.
Yeah.
As I'm saying, it relates back to that point. Just that was an interesting wee intermission there. Sorry, you continue, sir. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Who is continuing? I don't know.
Mr. Hyde,
To be
if
honest
you
with you,
still-
I've been kind of out of this discussion for a little while, obviously because of stuff going on in the house. But if anyone is really interested in HE, I have posted the link for my Reddit post, which broke it down. Honestly, it's a bit too complicated to make into a video. It is one of those topics where you have to sit down and you have to read if you really want to understand it deeply.
Yeah. And for those on Spotify and all that, we'll have to do something about you have to go into Hive's channel or his Discord or my channel, my Discord either, because I have links to guides in this. One of them is going to feature Hive's fire guide. It's a very interesting guide if you can grasp it, honestly. But anyway, I feel we've covered battleship issues to death.
Yeah.
Wiz just said in chat with 5 BBs per side, it gets really hard. Do you mean 5 DDs per side? Because if it's 5 DDs per side, that's where you take your radar cruiser and have lots of fun.
Yeah, that's borked, as they say in.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh shit! I wanted to say something else and I cannot remember.
No worries. So, should we finish up battleship issues, or do you have any more points to add, honestly?
Oh, I was just gonna say to put a bow on the HE AP thing. The rule of thumb that I said earlier: the smaller the gun, the more often you shoot HE from it. The larger the gun, the more often you shoot AP from it. Also, if you're a newer player and you got your smaller size guns, bigger ship goes broadside to you. The higher up on the ship you want to shoot with your AP to do damage. You got big guns, the lower on the ship you want to shoot, because that's where the Citadel is.
Yes,
Another
100% correct.
You're not going to Citadel a battleship in a destroyer or a light cruiser.
Well, yeah, in most cases, yeah.
Yeah, there's exceptions to the rule.
There's exceptions to every rule in the World of Warships. I just want to highlight that.
Well, just go and buy a general rule of thumb.
General rule of thumb.
That'd be the easiest thing to tell people, I think.
Yeah, I feel it's worth mentioning there's exceptions to these rules, but I do 100% agree. We're talking general terms here, just to confirm,
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so yeah, I feel we've covered battleship issues. Good ending point by Xarkun. The higher caliber gun you got, the more likelihood you'll be using HE, and vice versa with the larger gun caliber. Also, the lower gun caliber you got, if you see something broadside, generally the higher up you have to aim because the upper deck is usually thinner than the lower deck, and even if you can't pin the upper deck, you may be able to pin the superstructure. You probably always can pin a superstructure, but it depends on the boat and situations. So yeah, that's Battleship rants there. Battleship issue has been discussed. I believe, we have a final issue. Final topic, sorry, shall I say?
Like I said, we've been... so we've done the battleship issue, we've done tier rates, we've talked about...
Battleship issue to death, maybe.
You've talked about the bureau. So it's time for the rants.
Ooh.
So, mine is kind of a rant about rants. So,
Okay.
Ooh, that's spicy. That is
right,
very
okay.
spicy.
So, there's a lot of people, I think, are how can we say, sort of guilty of this, and which is ranting about bad teammates. Now,
Yeah.
there's some very different schools of thought, and just to clarify, I 100% get the frustration when, particularly if you've had a good game and your team have absolutely potatoed. I get it. It's extremely frustrating. Like you almost single-handedly won that game, but you didn't. And if just one of your teammates just killed one more ship, that's it. You would have won. I get that. I get the frustration. It is immensely frustrating. But like there's reasons for this. There's reasons why the player base appear to be so bad. So for the majority of people in chat, I know the Monk and Xarkun, for example, are people that I'm talking to here, are very experienced at this game. Most of the names I've seen you've been around for almost as long as I've been doing YouTube. Some of you, right from the start, like Mr. Flint, for example. Like I remember Mr. Flint being a very, very early subscriber. It's like you guys have been around for so long, and this is something people I think don't understand, which is perspective. So I don't like using like sports analogies, but I'm gonna use one. So it's like playing football. All right, okay. So when you start out playing football, when you're looking up through the different leagues of players, and you're looking, you're at the bottom and you're looking at the top. You're looking at these like Premiership players, yeah, and you're like, wow, like these guys are amazing. All these people are better than me. I'm kind of shit. So all you see are better players. But as you improve, as you go up those ranks, as you gain more experience and you get better at the game, less and less people look good and more people look bad. So I think people need to take into account like their experience in the game when looking at the player base. So it's like, I could turn around and say 70% of the player base are trash. And they are, from my perspective. But from your average player's perspective, 40 or maybe 30% of the player base is trash. And it's a free-to-play game, so the entrance level into this game is nothing. There's zero investment whatsoever. And when you have a game that's free-to-play like that, you are always going to get the people who literally don't care. They pick it up, they play for maybe 2 hours every other week because they're playing other games as well. This isn't their main game. So, like, this is the main game. I do play other stuff, but this is pretty much this is my main game. I play World of Warships far more than I play anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
For me, the player base in general is terrible. But for the guy who plays every other weekend, everyone else is amazing. And they're never going to get to that level. And I think it's really elitist to complain about bad players when they're not bad players. It's just you're really fucking good and you've invested so much time and effort into the game. You know the mechanics. You know how HE, you know how AP works. You know about angling because you've put so much time into it. And yeah, that's my rant basically. It's just
I could add on to that.
That's
and the other thing is
fair.
With tutorials, I see people saying like, "Oh, wargaming should like increase tutorials." So there is a basic tutorial at the beginning of the game, and I know we've already discussed it, but honestly, how many people paid attention to it? Like, I didn't pay any fucking attention to it when I started playing. Wargaming have a bunch of videos on how things work. How many people have gone and looked at them? Okay, you guys here, probably yes, but how many other people?
Yeah.
Probably
not very many, honestly.
How many games have you picked up a guide for? Or, like...
Yeah.
Who paid it? Who's played Elden Ring? Who's played Elden Ring and paid attention to the tutorials?
Like, I bloody did because it was Elden Ring, but yeah.
I'll say this. Everything you said was, I think, eminently fair, and I think that perspective is real, logical, and spot on. But at the same time, I'm a person, I will complain about my teammates. Usually I'll be very sarcastic about it, but the line I try to draw is I try to only complain about the actions that they're performing in game, as in, why is this destroyer rushing straight into the cap? He is being suicidal, he is going to die. And I try to never, ever, ever under any circumstances, insult somebody's intelligence for doing this kind of thing, or like impugn their moral character, because that's the line I draw. I say that is toxic, and unhelpful. But at the same time, maybe sarcastically complaining about the actions of my teammates. Maybe, you know, it. I do have experience in this game. This is also my most played game. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Sometimes you just can't help it when you're live on stream,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm kind of witty, I think. So
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
use it somehow.
Yeah. A good point that Hive has made, I can expand upon this, is I've seen streamers who stream this game, I'm not going to name any names because obvious reasons, I've seen them play, I've watched them play a little bit. I'm like, from my perspective, I don't see them as very good players. I'm not going to name the streamers, and fortunately, I don't know them and so forth. I'm not going to go down anything, but I've not seen them play very well. They seem to be very happy by getting 1 or 2 kills per game, which to certain people seems like nothing. But at the end of the day, from their point of view, that's a good game to them. And to my point of view, or maybe Xarkun's point of view, a good game to us is something with it's well over, it could be a certain damage value or a certain experience level for us, maybe a 2.7k game or 2.3k 3,000 experience game, base experience game would be a very good game for me or you, wouldn't it? You could argue that.
Right,
That'd be a very good game
apologies,
for us.
the kids are still up. The wife's got work really early in the morning, so I'm going to have to commence some daddy duties now.
Yes, yeah. We can finish up
Very good.
I think can we do like a quick wrap up on whatever we're talking about really quickly? I feel horrible ending it short, but because the wife's got to be up, she's got to be out of the house in like 6 hours.
From our perspective, yeah. Sorry, yeah. From our perspective, how good a player is very subjective to how well you are, what stage of the game you're on, basically. If you're really invested, then straight back.
I did want to say something really quickly before I got distracted, and which I think what Xarkun was saying about sort of critiquing or criticizing what a player is doing. Like if they're doing something silly, I think it's perfectly fine to point that out. And the way Xarkun does it, in all fairness, it wasn't a dig at you or anyone else in particular. But it's the whole, like, when you start calling the entire player base trash, you just brand everyone bad. Like, that's what my rant was more about. Like, critiquing, like, if you see a player literally do something, pull off a really bad move, going, oh my god, what is this guy doing? Like, why are you sailing broadside to an Iowa? That, I think, is perfectly fair and acceptable. And that I don't mind, but it's the whole like, oh, this player base is trash. This game is dying because the players are so dumb and things like that. It's like
that shouldn't be encouraged. No, I don't
No.
I don't agree with anyone saying that. That's just not the right way to not the right mindset.
Is the problem Xbox players or PS? Because we need to know.
No.
There are amazing players on both consoles. There's potatoes on most consoles. I have looked into the stats when they were available through, I can't remember what website off the top of my head, but roughly speaking, the player base seems to be like 2/3 PlayStation, 1/3 Xbox. It is more popular on PlayStation, probably because there are more PlayStations sold. I'm not knocking Xbox in any way, shape or form whatsoever, but what you're probably going to see is you probably are going to see slightly more better players on PlayStation, purely statistically because of numbers. But on the same hand, you're probably likely to see more potatoes playing on the PlayStation. But that's purely a statistical thing.
That is scientifically provable, and I'll tell you exactly fucking why, because this gets me going, actually. Is the problem Xbox or PlayStation players? I'll tell you what the real problem is. The real problem is the fucking potato PlayStation players who announce how much of a potato they are by turning off fucking crossplay and ducking me into their 6 versus 6 bullshit games Those are the problems.
Oh, yes.
There's exactly the same issue on Xbox. I've seen a couple of people on Facebook complaining about why are people allowed to turn crossplay off. Unfortunately, it's a legal requirement
Yeah, it's a legal
to
requirement.
have the
That is
ability to turn
unfortunate.
crossplay off. But I think that actually affects Xbox players more because their player base is smaller.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
We have Xbox people doing the same thing, just to
and, yeah.
highlight that. But it's
Yeah,
more
so-
Probably
impactful.
So that's a
does.
straight up rant I can get behind. If you turn crossplay off, you're a fucking mong.
I'm like, okay, I'm just sitting here middle ground here.
If you go in, or like, and I'm gonna play like devil's advocate because obviously my main account's on PlayStation. I have an Xbox account as well, which is completely free to play, by the way. So if I'm on my Xbox and going, I've turned crossplay off because PlayStation players are noobs. They're terrible. They suck. I was like, well, why wouldn't you put crossplay on? Because they would be easy kills.
There
Makes
we go.
sense, right?
That,
Yeah,
Right? If
you can't argue with that logic.
You can't.
exactly. Yeah, there we go. And on that bombshell, I believe we should do a wrap up, as you said, Hive, or should we just end it now?
Yeah, I think that like I've got shit to do, and I am sorry that I'm.
Yeah, because I know
short.
we went ranting on. Yeah, I don't want to
But-
rush you.
But
All
yeah,
right, so
yeah,
yeah.
it is actually a legal requirement. I can't remember what country introduced it, but
Yeah.
I think it might have been the EU actually. But yeah, it's just a legal requirement to let you turn it off.
That seems like, I don't want to get too political, but that seems like the government exercising bullshit power for no reason. Who the fuck does that protect? And from what?
That protects me from trashy Xbox players, apparently.
Oh,
I don't know.
shots fired. Okay, moving on.
That was
Anyway.
a joke, by the way. Xbox guys.
Yeah,
love
yeah,
you
I
too.
know. I like to,
Right.
I like to cause some, put
But
some
yeah,
stuff in the
I am going to have to call it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Monk and Xarkun, for joining us.
Yeah, and guys,
Yeah,
remember,
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
From the parts I
thank
was
you very much,
involved in,
Xarkun.
I really fucking enjoyed it. It was good chat.
Yeah. Just remember, guys, we've got a shortened podcast version of this very episode, just a more bullet pointy, and it's just probably just me and Hive, maybe Xarkun if he's feeling it later on, about just a shortened version of this podcast, not something that is potentially hours and hours long. A very short version is on my channel. So if you're
Won't be recording that
listening to-
tonight.
if you're-
That'll be
yeah.
tomorrow. But
yeah, that'll be tomorrow or some point.
yeah,
But yeah, we'll
so
be
we'll
today.
have a condensed version over on the Monk 52's channel,
Yeah.
and obviously you'll be able to listen to the entire podcast on Spotify and Anchor FM as of tomorrow, when I get around to uploading it, because I'm not doing that tonight anyway as well. Right, so on that bombshell, thank you very much for everyone who joined. I hope you did enjoy. Don't forget to smash that like button. Drop a comment in the in the chat below if you've got any topics you'd like us to discuss in future episodes, or if you've disagreed with anything we've said. Well, I'll definitely be checking the comments and chatting to everyone, throughout over the weekend. And yeah,
Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Xarkun, for joining us. That was always a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much. And anyone else who wants to join us for future episodes, please let us know as well. Sorry, I just highlight need to make sure that's we need to say that at some point.
yeah, and on that note, I think we're done.
Yeah,
So,
I think so.
do you care to say so long to the people, Mr. Xarkun?
This was fun. This is a very fun idea. This is very chill. I just did a 4-hour stream before this, and I don't feel exhausted after the end of this, after having discussed
Don't
things
feel like throwing
battleships and
controllers
stuff to
through
death.
screens, no?
Yeah, no, this is very nice. And so yeah, thank you for having me. And with that, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Yeah, and obviously, Mr. Xarkun, you're welcome to join us again anytime. I'm sure he will. So thank you very much to
Yeah.
our co-host, Mr. Monk, especially for taking over and keeping everything ticking over for me whilst I was dealing with with family stuff. And
Oh, no worries, no worries, no worries.
Wow.
Happy to help. That's what I'm here for.
until next time, take care.